talk about the EU. We're not in it anymore, thank God, but lots of countries still are. And on Monday, almost passed without notice, the Netherlands became the 9th country in the EU, in the European Union, to close its borders. It joined Austria, Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, Norway, Slovenia and Sweden. All these countries have now closed their borders, and they're not supposed to, because the EU principle, it's the Schengen principle, is that people can pass within these countries without being stopped, without having to show documents. It's what the dream is all about. Used to be the same for us when we were in the EU. You could just come over, you didn't need to show passports or anything like that. Well, you do now because we've left the EU. Not that our system is particularly working well, as you well know. However, I just thought it's very interesting that more and more countries in Europe, in the EU, are realising that the EU's dream of the brotherhood of man, the borderless, massive block of Europe where we can all move freely and mingle with each other wonderfully, it's an impossible dream, it's a naive dream, and the reality is migrants are coming in and causing all sorts of problems, and therefore the peoples of these countries, particularly Germany, are just saying, no, close the borders, and they're doing it. Let's talk to the head of the Centre for Applied History in Budapest, at the MCC in Budapest, Ralph Schoellhammer. Welcome to the show, Ralph.
Kevin, great to be back on. It has been a while.
Always a pleasure. Yeah, this is interesting syndrome, isn't it? I mean, quietly, in a way, all of these countries, the Netherlands has now joined the gang, are flying in the face of the central EU principle. It's the most sacred principle of the EU that there must be freedom of movement between all of the countries. We now have 9 member countries who do not allow freedom of movement because there is a reality, and the reality of migrants coming into these countries has caused all sorts of social problems, all sorts of criminal problems and all sorts of political problems, and these governments are closing their borders. So what is the point of the EU if you can't move among the countries, if they've got closed borders?
Well, I think this is the great irony of this story. If you cannot protect the EU's external borders, what you get are internal borders. And this is precisely what's currently happening. Your observation is absolutely right. This is in many ways the end of the European dream. And it's, to be quite honest, it's a little bit tragic, because I have many issues, as viewers know, with the European Union, and I never hold back when it comes to despairing at the idiocy coming out of the Brussels bureaucracy. But the original idea, saying you have safe external borders of the European Union and allow free movement within the European Union, was, I think, in principle, a good idea. And as you and I both know, right, when we talk about migration, the problem was never Germans coming to Austria or people from the Czech Republic moving to Sweden, right? The problem with migration, and by the way, I think the same is true for the United Kingdom, is non-Western, non-European migration. And that simply, it's overwhelming for most countries. Let me just give you a quick number. The University of Amsterdam recently did a study, and between 1995 and 2019, the Dutch government, and those are the official numbers, so hold on to your chair, spent every year 17 billion euros on non-Western migration. That's 1 billion euros, more than 1 billion euros, in fact, every month, for the kind of migration, right, that comes from culturally significantly different people. And this is the problem we have all over the West. And it's a tragic, because, as you also correctly pointed out, this has been ignored for 30 years. And at some point we have to ask, and I know that many people in the UK justifiably ask the same question, if a crisis goes on for 30 years, at some point you have to ask whether it's by design and on purpose or not.
Very good point. Now, I think the tipping point was back in August for all of these countries, or culturally in terms of the borderless dream. I think it was back in August when that maniac let loose in a square in Germany and ran round the crowd, slitting people's throats. He killed 3 people, as I remember, and seriously injured 8 more. Guess what? The authorities, by the way, the police spent days saying, oh, we don't have a description. It's too difficult to get a description. Meanwhile, all the crowd who saw it said, it was an Arab. It was an Arab. They would not say what he looked like, and he was able to be at large because of this cultural timidity on the part of the police for days. In the end, thank God, he gave himself up. But the German people then discovered that this guy was, drum roll, big surprise, a Syrian asylum seeker, and the German people said, enough, enough. Stop this. Stop letting them in. Germany closed its borders, and now more and more other European countries are doing so. This is the problem, isn't it? It is the people of these countries who are saying, you're letting in people that we don't even know anything about.
Yeah, I mean, it seems, particularly in Germany, that Allahu Akbar is, Arabic for nothing to see here. At least that's the impression that somebody gets. But let's be honest, your description is very accurate, but I would argue it's very similar to what happened in the United Kingdom in Southport, right? Where originally it was a young man from Cardiff, a Welshman, could have been anybody. Then it turned out, no, well, he was the son of Rwandan immigrants. And then it turned out ultimately that most likely he had a connection, at least a self-created one, to Al-Qaeda, and was, as far as I recall, was also preparing biological weapons at home using ricin.
These are the charges, these are the allegations, we must say.
Of course, of course. But
you're right, I totally accept
it. It always happens like this. The point is, you're correct, right? I mean, again, I don't want to create a false narrative here, but the point is, this was known by the suspicion was there very early on, and it was denied. Just like in Germany, it's always the motive. The motive is unclear. Listen, if somebody says Allahu Akbar, the motive is pretty clear, in my opinion. Listen, if I go into Jewish school and I would slaughter Jewish school children while screaming Heil Hitler, I don't think that the Guardian would title motive unclear. We don't know what's going on here. Everybody would understand what's going on, and it's the kind of gaslighting by public authorities is what I believe drives so many people justifiably mad, right? You see it with your own eyes, and there's always this attempt by the authorities because they cannot admit the failure of their policies that they try to gaslight you. Again, I cannot use another expression, unfortunately.
I think you're exactly right. Ralph, it's really good to have you on board again. Let's not leave it so long again. Ralph Schoellhammer, the head of the Centre for Applied History at the MCC in Budapest.